Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're tackling a really big topic, political polarization in the United States.
Yeah, it feels like it's everywhere you look.
Absolutely. And we've got quite a bit of material to sort through the latest 2024 party platforms, data on how politicians are voting, public opinion surveys, academic research, the works.
Right. A lot to unpack.
Our goal here really is to get a clearer picture of the actual policy differences. Where do the Democrats and Republicans really stand apart? Where did these divides come from? What's pushing them? And ultimately, why should you care?
And we need to think about it in context, too. It's not just policy distance. It's tied up with how our identities are sorting along party lines.
Right, that partisan sorting.
And frankly, the growing animosity.
Yeah.
That effective polarization piece. We'll focus on policy, but keep those other aspects in mind.
Okay, let's dive in. Maybe start with the economy. That's always central.
Definitely. Big divides there.
On taxes, for instance, you see Democrats generally pushing for a more progressive system. They talk about higher taxes on the very wealthy, on corporations.
Yeah, things like that 25% minimum tax for billionaires, bumping the corporate rate up, closing loopholes, generally aiming to protect earners under $400.
While Republicans, they tend to prioritize lower taxes overall. Making those 2017 cuts permanent is a big one for them. Low corporate taxes.
And even getting rid of the tax on tips that was mentioned, though they also talk about tariffs, which is a kind of tax.
Interesting point. So fundamentally different approaches to who pays and how much.
Exactly. And that flows right into spending, doesn't it?
It does. Democrats generally advocate for more government spending, social programs, infrastructure, clean energy, education, the safety net.
The idea is often about reducing inequality, investing in public goods. Protecting Social Security and Medicare comes up often, too.
Republicans usually push for less spending, cutting programs they see as wasteful, shrinking the overall budget.
Though defense spending often gets a boost. And interestingly, the 2024 platform also mentions protecting Social Security and Medicare, despite historical pushes for reform.
That's a key nuance. What about regulation?
Oh, another stark contrast.
Hmm.
Democrats generally favor active government regulation, consumer protection, environmental rules, worker safety, antitrust.
Targeting things like junk fees, pharma companies, oil and gas.
Right, whereas the Republican approach is much more about deregulation, reducing burdens on business, the idea being it spurs the economy, lowers costs.
So cutting rules tied to things like the Green New Deal or electric vehicle mandates.
Precisely, which leads us straight into energy and environment, perhaps the biggest gulf of all.
It feels like it. Democrats frame it as a climate crisis needing urgent action. So massive investment in renewables, stricter pollution standards.
Conservation and environmental justice are key themes, too.
Republicans focuses more on energy dominance, using oil, gas, nuclear, lifting regulations, questioning the urgency of climate action, pushing back against things like EV mandates.
Yeah, the priority level given to climate change is just fundamentally different between the parties.
Okay, let's shift to healthcare. The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, still a major dividing line.
Still is. Democrats want to protect and expand it, make subsidies permanent, push for Medicaid expansion, maybe even a public option down the line.
Republicans have historically focused on repeal and replace, though the 2024 platform talks more about transparency, choice, competition, less about outright repeal now.
The language has shifted a bit, yeah. More market-based solutions, state flexibility.
And drug prices. Democrats are pushing for Medicare negotiation, caps on costs.
Yeah, targeting big pharma.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans tend to focus more on promoting competition, transparency as the way to lower prices.
And then, of course, abortion and reproductive rights. A really stark divide.
Absolutely fundamental. Democrats pushing to codify Roe v. Wade federally, protect contraception, IVF. Republicans largely opposing abortion, supporting state-level restrictions, with some aiming for national limits.
It's a core issue with very little middle ground. And we see similar deep divisions on, LGBTQ plus rights, gun control, education, immigration.
Different philosophies on equality, safety, national identity.
Even on how democracy itself should work, voting access versus election security measures, campaign finance rules.
Right. Things like automatic voter registration versus strict voter ID laws, or regulating campaign money versus free speech arguments. It touches everything.
So how do we get so polarized? Is it worse than before?
Well, researchers measure this stuff. They look at congressional roll call votes over time. There's a measure called DW Nominate, which basically tracks how liberal or conservative members of Congress vote, especially on the government's role in the economy.
And what does that show?
It shows polarization wasn't always this high. Back in the mid-20th century, there was actually quite a bit of overlap between moderate Democrats and Republicans.
The good old days, some people talk about.
Maybe. But then came the Great Sorting, starting around the 60s and 70s, largely driven by civil rights. People started aligning their party ID more consistently with their ideology.
So liberals became Democrats, conservatives became Republicans more reliably.
Exactly. And since the late 70s, the distance between the parties has just steadily increased. It's accelerated more recently, and importantly, it hasn't been symmetrical.
How so?
Most analyses show the Republican Party has moved further to the right than the Democratic Party has moved to the left, particularly on that main economic dimension.
Interesting. And the party platforms reflect this widening gap.
Oh, absolutely. They've become much more distinct documents, really highlighting these ideological differences.
So wrapping this up, the key takeaway seems to be, yes, the policy differences between the parties are significant, they're growing, and they have deep historical roots.
And it's happening alongside that sorting in the public and the rise in, well, just disliking the other side. Effective polarization.
Right. It all feeds into itself. We've covered a lot, drawing from platforms, voting records, public opinion, but there are still open questions about exactly what drives every aspect of this and what the long-term consequences will be.
Definitely. The interplay between elite polarization and what the average person believes on specific policies, the role of social media, lots more to study.
So something for you, the listener, to think about. How do these deep policy divides on the economy, healthcare, climate, social issues actually impact your daily life? And does understanding this history change how you view today's political landscape?
It's worth considering as we navigate this polarized environment.
Indeed. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.